New Mutants was one of the releases this year I was kind of excited for, and I finally watched it at home because none of my theaters were actually playing it when they did open, and then they immediately shut down. So it's like I didn't even get to see the movie while it was playing in theaters. And New Mutants is not that good. It's not terrible. Um, we got a bunch of teens who are discovering their powers, and they're upset, and they're locked in this place, and there's lots of angst. It's very boring. It's incredibly poorly paced. The actors have some decent chemistry. It just doesn't feel like a superhero movie, which is nice that it feels slightly different, even though, here's the thing, it's a comic book movie. People act like somehow comic book movies aren't allowed to be unique. I'm sorry, I have a hard time saying the word. A lot of comic book movies are very unique. It's just that we don't realize how unique comics are because the movies don't try to focus on that very much, but that's because a lot of people like the generic aspect of comic book movies nowadays. And so, I mean, look at Marvel. Most generic comic book movies of all time, and they're the big ones. And so, when someone comes along and is slightly different, we treat it like it's special, which this is not. It's not special. It's not that interesting. It's a very bland movie. It's directed by the guy who made Fault in Our Stars. A very bland movie. A very bland looking movie. I know a lot of people like that movie, and I'm not saying it's a terrible film, but I'm saying in terms of how it's directed and put together, it's bland. That's how it is. And I'm going to say right now, if you're going to come at me in the comments, say because I'm hating on a movie about cancer, I'm a messed up individual, go at me if you want to say that. Because, just because of the subject matter doesn't mean I have to tell you it's a good movie. Okay, I don't have to pretend something's a good movie because of the subject matter. Like, really? No. And so, yeah, he directed this movie. It's very bland. The effects in it are very fake, very cheap, very ugly. They're not in the film very long, so it doesn't matter too much. But there isn't too much to say about it. It's just like the performances are meh, which is weird because I really like some of the people in this movie, like Anya Taylor-Joy. She's a great actress. I love her work in Split, The Witch. But she's terrible in this movie, pretty much. It's one of the worst performances I've ever seen from her. And it's just like, this is the end of the X-Men franchise, Dark Phoenix, and this bland, boring, useless film that offers nothing. I mean, say what you will about Glass, but I got more entertainment out of Glass than I did this movie. Because at least Glass, it's a superhero movie with characters being locked in a mental institution. But there's an interesting concept that they're trying to explore, which is the idea that our characters' superpowers are in their heads, and they're imagining this concept. That's an interesting concept. What interesting concept is being explored here? I mean, these are concepts that are explored better in X-Men stories. The idea of characters hating themselves because society has made them feel like their powers are a bad thing, could cause issues for other people. But it's not explored very well or good in this movie. You got that. You got the kid from Stranger Things who plays Jonathan. He's here, I guess. He didn't really do anything, and in terms of a horror movie, which is why most people want to see it, it's not scary. It doesn't do anything to be that scary. It's like you watch it, it's so mildly scary. It's like it didn't even try to be scary, honestly. Most of this movie is just a boring, angsty movie about people whining and being all sad and discovering their powers, being and that's most of the movie. That's the movie. So if you want to watch an hour, over 2 hours? What's the runtime here? An hour and a half of the movie, here you go. Because this movie's nothing. It's not a horrible movie. It's not a great movie either. And I feel like if you were interested in the movie like I was, you'll be very disappointed. Because it's just like, it's a movie that could have been more interesting than it was, and it just wasn't. It just wasn't interesting. It just wasn't special. And it could have been. Could have been an interesting concept, especially from those trailers. They're playing that Pink Floyd song. We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control. Having characters who are being tormented psychologically to kind of bring out their powers and like escape this institution using them. What if there could have been some interesting twist with that and done interesting things with that? The twist in this movie is very predictable. It's just a bad movie. Don't watch it. Don't watch it unless you want to rent it for really cheap. It's a decent rental, I guess, but it's just like, it's not worth buying, going to the theater, or anything like that. Let me know what you thought of New Mutants if you saw it. I'm just sad this is just how the X-Men franchise is going out. It's not a great series of movies. Had a ton of flaws, but it had some. But the high points were really, really high points. The low points were very, very low points. But those high points were worth it. And now Disney owns them, so we'll probably get some very bland looking movies.